Hey y'all, it's Squid. Welcome back to another video. As promised, I have the JAC's response to Sarah Boone. Let's get into it. It's pretty quick. It's only 5 pages long, and they're pretty straight to the point with what they expect. Let's get into this. State of Florida v. Sarah Boone. Justice Administrative Commission's response to motions seeking due process costs. Comes now the Justice Administrative Commission, JAC, by and through the undersigned attorney files this response to the above cited motions as follows. 1. The defendant seeking authorization for various due process costs as follows. Appointment of standby counsel to assist the defendant, cost to take depositions, an unspecified amount for a defense investigator, unspecified expert witnesses to assist the defense, costs for unspecified witnesses to appear at trial. 2. As an initial concern, any future request for due process cost, such as requests for transcripts, investigative costs, or experts, need to be served to the JAC prior to the court considering the matter. The defendant is responsible for providing JAC with any motions for due process costs so that JAC can respond accordingly to those requests. In Sarah Boone's defense, she's not a lawyer. She either knew or didn't care. My guess is didn't know. Because as of her own words, she didn't choose to represent herself. That sounds hilarious saying it because she didn't know what she got into. 3. The JAC may only pay for due process costs pursuant to sections 29.007, 27.40, and 27.5304, section 2 of Florida statutes. 4. As directed by section 27.425 Florida statutes and the General Appropriations Act, all due process services are subject to the Florida statutes and the JAC contract, policies, and procedures. JAC objects to any compensation rate in excess of established rates. Standby counsel. 5. As for the appointment of standby counsel, the court entered an order on June 28, 2024, finding that the defendant waived her right to court-appointed counsel through her conduct in this matter. Thus, the court has already ruled on the issue of appointed counsel. Deposition-related costs. As for costs to take deposition, the defendant is authorized to incur costs to take depositions for those deposition authorized under the Florida Rules of Criminal Procedures. The notice of taking deposition substitutes for a court order for purposes of the court reporter seeking compensation for appearance fees. 7. As for service of process, service must be through the sheriff unless the sheriff is unable or unavailable to provide services of process. In those instances where private service of process is necessary, a separate motion to incur costs for private process server will be required. The sheriff must be used to serve in-county law enforcement. 8. As for transcripts, JAC has no objection to regular paid rates. The motion and order for transcripts must reflect sufficient information to identify the proceedings to be transcribed, such as the type and date of hearing, date and type of hearing, and recording type and date of recording. The defendant should only order those transcripts necessary for defense of the case. 9. The uniform statewide rates set forth in the General Appropriations Act, court reporting services cannot exceed these rates. Private investigator costs. Pursuant to the uniform statewide rates, the rates for investigators cannot exceed $50 per hour. 11. As required by Florida law, any private investigator providing services in Florida must have a Class C license from the Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services and must be employed by an investigation agency with a Class A license. 12. If the court grants the motion, the order needs to indicate the amount authorized for the defense investigator. Based on the docket, it appears Prison Break Investigations, Billy Lane, may have already been appointed to this matter. He was, Sarah didn't know it. One of the other things she didn't realize she had. JAC does not object to the court authorizing $5,000 for a defense investigator and $500 for the investigator to obtain case-related documents and materials on behalf of the defendant. Expert costs. 13. Based on JAC's records, the court previously approved $3,000 at a rate of $200 per hour for a defense mental health expert. JAC does not object to the court continuing this authorization now that the defendant is representing herself. 14. As to other requests for experts, the defendant will need to file an appropriate motion delineating the following: 1. Identity or type of expert. 2. Amount authorized, cap for the expert services. And 3. Rates authorized for the expert services, which I'm sure Sarah Boone doesn't have any clue of who she wants as an expert, how much they cost, where to find one. She has no idea. 15. The defendant has the burden to show the particularized need for each expert witness. She has no idea. The defendant needs to show the services of the expert is necessary for the defense of the case. She'll never be able to make that link if it's thrown at her. 16. As enunciated by the Florida Supreme Court, a party seeking due process cost has the burden to establish 1. The particularized need for the due process services, and 2. Prejudice arising from the denial of due process services. See Bargo v. State, Florida 2017, and Middleton v. State, Florida 2017, Marshall v. Crosby, Florida 2005. 17. The determination of whether to appoint an expert is within the broad discretion of the trial court. An indigent defendant must show the trial court that there exists a reasonable probability that both that the expert would be of assistance to the defense and that the denial of the expert assistance would result in a fundamentally unfair trial. Andrews v. State, Florida 2018, quoting Moore v. Kemp, 11th Circuit, 1987. Costs ordinary witnesses. 18. The defendant will need to submit a more detailed motion delineating the witnesses she seeks to summon for trial and the anticipated costs associated with these witnesses. Requirement for JAC due process contract. 19. If any providers desire direct payment, the JAC's procedures require the vendor to execute the appropriate contract and follow JAC's billing and audit procedures to obtain payment. 20. Because of the unusual circumstances presented in this matter, JAC requests to participate in the hearing set on August 5th. JAC requests to appear through communications equipment and can be reached toll-free at 866-355-7902. Wherefore, the JAC requests, should the court grant the defendant's motions, also include in its order the specific due process services authorized, as well as hourly or per unit rates and maximum fees authorized, and that the provider be paid in accordance with rates, terms, and conditions set forth by Florida statutes and the JAC contract policies and procedures. Certificate of Service. Christian Lake, Assistant General Counsel, Justice Administrative Commission. When Sarah filed these motions, she had no idea what she was doing. She tried her best. I will give her that much. However, she had probably been told that she needed to go through JAC and either didn't listen or didn't care. I'm not really sure which one. All right, guys, have a great day. I'll be back tonight at about 9:15, 9:30-ish with my second episode of Politics, Facts versus Misconceptions, We have some interesting things to discuss tonight, some follow-up on stuff we talked about last week. It should be fun. Anyway, have a great day, guys. Bye.